Welcome to our gathering at First Unitarian Universalist Church of Stockton. We're glad you've joined us and hope you will find here what you are seeking. We are a community of individuals holding many different beliefs, coming from many different places, and each progressing on our own journeys of life and faith. We join together in our commitment to care for humanity and to shape a better, healthier, more accepting, more inclusive, and more hopeful world. We promise to accept and encourage all those persons of goodwill who gather here, recognizing that we all continue to learn and grow throughout our lifetimes. We especially welcome and stand with LGBTQ persons, even as we seek to welcome all persons of every age, ability, status, color, and ethnicity. We strive to make our community a place of peace and acceptance, love and nurture, even as we challenge ourselves and others to live more faithfully according to the values of Unitarian Universalism.
We, the peoples of the United Nations, determined to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, to reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights, the dignity and worth of human person, in the equal rights of men and women and of nations large and small, to promote social progress and better standards of life in larger freedom, and for these ends to practice tolerance and to live together in peace as good neighbors, to unite our strength to maintain international peace and security, to ensure that armed force shall not be used, save in the common interest, to employ international machinery in the promotion of the economic and social advancement of all people, have resolved to combine our efforts to accomplish these aims. Charter of the United Nations. We light our chalice hopefully that there might come peace in the world. We light our chalice as our promise to continue working for peace and justice in our own land and around the world. We light our chalice in commitment to nurture peace in our hearts, our homes,
This time in our service, I invite you to at least virtually join hands. This is what we do when we are gathered, and I hope the energy from our community can be shared by virtually joining our hands together. May this congregation always be dedicated to the proposition that behind all our differences, beneath all our diversity, there's a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together, in spite of time and death and the space between the stars. We pause in silent witness to that unity. May the stars carry your sadness away. May the flowers fill your heart with beauty. May hope forever wipe away your tears, and above all, may love make you strong. Go now in peace. Amen.
Words of affirmation. We believe in love. Love is the only doctrine of this church. We believe in truth. The quest for truth is our sacrament. We believe in helping others, and service is our prayer. We believe in the sacredness of life. To dwell together in peace, seek knowledge in freedom, serve humanity in fellowship, and cherish the earth and its creatures. This do we covenant with each other.
Seed of peace, seed of peace, a seed of peace. I am a seed of peace, a seed of peace. I am a seed, I am a seed of peace. I am a seed, I am a seed of peace. People of peace, rejoice, rejoice, for we have united into one voice, a voice of peace and hate of war. United hands have built a bridge between two shores. We've torn down the wall. We stand hand in hand, we march to the call. We've learned from the past and fear not what's ahead. I know I'll not walk alone, but with a friend instead. I am a seed, I am a seed of peace. I am a seed, I am a seed of peace. Peace, 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 peace.
The Tree Lady. The true story of how one tree-loving woman changed a city forever. Catherine Olivia Sessions grew up in the woods of Northern California. She gathered leaves from oaks and elms, she collected needles from pines and redwoods, and she braided them together with flowers to make necklaces and bracelets. It was the 1860s, and girls from Kate's side of town weren't supposed to get their hands dirty. But Kate did. Kate listened well in school. She learned how to write and count. She remembered the poems and stories read, but best of all, she liked studying wind, rain, mussels, bones, plants, and trees, especially trees. Most girls were discouraged from studying science, but not Kate. Kate felt the trees were her friends. She loved the way they reached toward the sky. Trees seemed like giant umbrellas that sheltered her and the animals. Not everyone feels at home in the woods, but Kate did. When Kate grew up, she left home to study science at college. No woman had ever graduated from the University of California with a degree in science, but in 1881, Kate did. After graduation, Kate took a job in Southern California. When her boat docked in San Diego, she saw that her new home was a desert town. Kate never thought she would live in a place with very few trees, but now she did. Kate began her job as a teacher. She was also the vice principal of the school, so she had to make sure everyone followed the rules. Kate missed studying science and was not sure she would stay on the job, but for 2 years, she did. From her school, Kate could see City Park in the hills above the town. It was called a park, but it didn't look like one. It was where people grazed cattle and dumped garbage. Most San Diegans didn't think trees could ever grow there, but Kate did. With Kate's love for the woods, she thought San Diego needed trees more than anything else. So she left teaching to become a gardener. She knew she must plant trees that could live in dry soil with lots and lots of sunshine. Her friends worried that Kate wouldn't find trees like that, but she did. Kate became a tree hunter. She wrote letters to gardeners all over the world and asked them to send her seeds that could grow in a desert. She also traveled south into Mexico to look for trees that liked hot, dry weather and steep hills and canyons. Not everyone knows how to hunt for trees, but Kate did. Soon, Kate's trees were planted along streets, around schools, and in small parks all over town. People bought trees from Kate's nursery and planted them in her yard. From elms and oaks to eucalyptuses and palms, by the turn of the century, young trees from Kate's nursery were growing in every part of San Diego. Most people didn't think a desert town could sustain so many trees, but Kate did. Then in 1909, the city leaders announced a great fair was coming to San Diego. The fair would be held in City Park, now called Balboa Park. Kate felt that Balboa Park still needed more trees, thousands more, to look beautiful and shade the visitors that came to the fair. That was too many trees for Kate to plant by herself, but she knew lots of people could do it together. She asked her friends to bring their friends and come to the park for tree planting parties. Again and again, people volunteered to help. Those volunteers weren't sure they could plant enough trees, but before long, they did. And when the fair opened, San Diego was ready. Millions of trees and plants filled Balboa Park. The fair had so many visitors it stayed open for 2 years instead of 1. People came from near and far to see the attractions and stroll in the cool shade. The fairgoers couldn't believe San Diego had such magnificent gardens, but thanks to Kate, it did. In the years after the fair, Kate was given many awards for her work, and people took to calling her the mother of Balboa Park. She continued gardening and planting trees until her death in 1940. Back then, few could have imagined that San Diego would become the lush, leafy city it is today. But all along, year after year, Catherine Olivia Sessions did.
We light this candle as an invitation to share the milestones in our lives by lighting candles of joy and concern. I don't have specific joys or concerns that were requested this week, but again, I will light a candle for those suffering from COVID-19, one for those suffering from issues around racism and white supremacy in our society, another for the LGBTQIAA people who might have come out in the past week, one for those suffering from storms in the Gulf Coast and other places in the Southeast, and one for all of those displaced and affected by the fires here in California. And then I'll light one more for all those things that are in our hearts but may not have been spoken, as I invite us into a time of silent thought, prayer, and meditation.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Reading today is from Lao Tzu. If there is to be peace. If there is to be peace in the world, there must be peace in the nations. If there is to be peace in the nations, there must be peace in the cities. If there is to be peace in the cities, there must be peace between neighbors. If there is to be peace between neighbors, there must be peace in the home. If there is to be peace in the home, there must be peace in the heart.
At this time in our service, we invite people to share their gifts and offerings. We also accept pledges that people want to share, and we do all that by sending them to our church office, 2737 Pacific Avenue, Stockton, California, 95204. Thank you. Once upon a time, there were dozens of countries who came together after a terrible war and decided that there should be a way to prevent future wars. They put together a plan for an organization called the United Nations, where international disputes could be worked out and efforts could be coordinated to make things better for all Earth's people. Eventually, most of the nations of the world became members of the UN, holding seats in the Great Assembly that is the main body of the UN. This is United Nations Sunday. My thoughts are on international as well as domestic cooperation. For decades, the UN organization has grown in its effort to connect people around the globe, help countries in need, and to prevent wars. As with most democratic organizations, it has had good years and bad years, with more or less pressure from the richest and most powerful countries. Some countries have withheld support or withdrawn from different aspects of UN work from time to time. There's a Security Council to handle serious threats, conflicts, and wars, with a few countries holding veto power over any actions. Soldiers from many nations have been called to go into several conflicts as a peacekeeping security force over the years. In an effort to balance the health and welfare of people and to promote development among nations facing greater challenges, the UN has developed goals and programs to help nations better share food, housing, and health care with their people. The United Nations organization has become a point of conflict between parties and groups in the United States, particularly around birth control programs, but also more generally around financial support, resettlement of refugees, and some food purchase and distribution programs. The United States has also refused to join or accept jurisdiction and judgments of the International Criminal Court. With a permanent seat and veto power on the UN Security Council, the U.S., along with Russia, China, France, and Britain, can each block any substantive actions they don't like. The U.S. has often gone around UN action by taking matters to NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which includes our European allies. This has allowed the U.S. to keep more control of many conflicts which would not have been supported by Russia or China. NATO forces, along with U.S. forces, have taken action several times in response to geopolitical concerns. The recent threats by Trump to withdraw from and withdraw support for the World Health Organization are one more challenge to international cooperation under the United Nations. His unwillingness to accept tests for COVID-19 developed in other countries, probably for economic reasons, is one of the major failures in his response to the pandemic. Had the German tests been used, the extent of the pandemic in the United States would have been known sooner, and actions to prevent the spread could have been put in place earlier. Over the last several years, the growing divide in the United States has also affected the amount of cooperation occurring around the world. The greatest divide in the U.S. is around wealth and those who would support the desires of the wealthy. One of the most significant tactics of the Republican Party over the last dozen years is to withdraw cooperation and insist upon their own way rather than trying to work out any compromises. Some of that withdrawal of cooperation was to refuse to pass or even discuss anything proposed by Obama, our first black president. The resurgence of racism in this country was fueled by that response from Republicans. Much of Trump's base is racist enough to support Mitch McConnell's decision to block anything coming from Obama and then to support Trump as president. The amazing thing to me is that Trump's ongoing quest to dismantle anything Obama accomplished, and his failure to cooperate on just about anything, and his failures dealing with the pandemic, still have not driven his voters away. Hopefully, the election will bring change. I've long thought of the United Nations as the best thing to come out of the aftermath of the Second World War. I remember collecting pennies for UNICEF at Halloween when I was a kid, believing that we would help children around the world through our effort. I still see hope in the United Nations. The successes of the United Nations have all been achieved because the nations have cooperated, supporting the work. Failures in the work of the UN, like recent failures to progress in this country, have been mostly due to failures of cooperation, communication, and the willingness to compromise for the greater good. Though I certainly have my preferences on all kinds of things, I discovered long ago that I needed to compromise in some areas to get most of the things that I want. That is at the core of democracy, the need to work together to find compromises that will satisfy the most people. Sometimes the horse trading in democracy can get brutal, but it is necessary. When one side stops trading and decides that only their way will work, democracy falters and eventually fails. It is the debate leading to compromise that helps everyone get to a decision they can live with, not the demands of one party to get its own way. In some ways, the multi-party systems of many nations have become more democratic than our current two-party system. Yes, I know there are other parties, but they have never yet succeeded to the point of requiring any kind of coalition government which would inherently include compromises. Under some U.S. administrations, the threat of withholding support has hamstrung the work of the UN and undermined international democracy. Of course, the UN has failings, including representation by many nations that are not democratic. But it is the organization that has been most effective in bringing the nations together. It also has done the most to help the developing nations of the world to make progress without becoming beholden to multinational corporations. The UN has also had significant involvement in making known the dangers of climate change. Our nation can either be the greatest help in many of the efforts or block the progress. And lately we have been blocking more than helping. Cooperation on every level of government is necessary for progress to happen. When Congress decides to allow blockades, nothing happens. When major nations choose to withdraw their support, little happens. In national and world decisions, the best results usually come from careful discussions involving compromises and cooperation that are based in science and research about alternatives. As we continue into the 21st century, it is time to move forward from 17th, 18th, 19th, and even 20th century ideas of how things ought to be. Religious communities can help to look forward or hold back progress in the name of religious ideas not even considered by their founders and religious exemplars. During the 19th and 20th centuries, Unitarians and Universalists studied and learned from many other religious traditions, leaving aspects of the Christianity from whence both came behind. Currently, UUs have been struggling to move beyond racism and white supremacy through various efforts, including reparations. As a number of devastating consequences of pollution and climate change have begun to unfold in intensified storms, droughts, and fires, it is not really known how long humans will have before devastating changes become permanent, or even whether rolling back pollution will make a difference. We all know that our current American lifestyle is not sustainable. But will our nation decide to make changes in the November election? I hope that we will see major changes coming soon, but it will take more than changing a few leaders to do what must be done. We also need to change the hearts and educate millions of people in the wealthy nations. The United Nations organization needs our support as a nation, a religion, and as individuals. I hope that the opportunity will come soon to take the science more seriously. This is the great quest of our time, though the last 4 years have become a distraction. I hope that we soon shall move forward again in the direction that will preserve and protect the earth and all her inhabitants. So may it be. Shalom, salam, blessed be, namaste, and amen.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe. live in peace. We shall live in peace someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall live in peace someday.
At this time, as we think of all those people who are struggling with all that's going on with COVID-19, with the issues of racism, white supremacy, and the need to recognize that Black lives matter in our society, as we think of those who are struggling with fires and floods, as we think of all those people who are going through difficult times, suffering from depression, agonizing over various situations in their life that they may or may not be able to exert any control over, we send our good energy to all those people of goodwill who are doing their best in our society and in the world, but especially in this congregation, as we each deal with all those things that we have to face in our lives. We give thanks for this community as a place where we can share those things that are important to us, where we can share our full stories, where we can come out and be out, where we can be together in supporting each other through difficult times. For all these things, we give thanks for this community and for all who gather here and throughout our Unitarian Universalist tradition, but all the people of goodwill everywhere in the world. For this community especially, we give thanks. Amen.